Hello, my name is Chris Davidson. I work in the Financial Aid Office at Jefferson Community and Technical College. And today I'm going to talk to you about Satisfactory Academic Progress, or SAP, and what that means to you as a student at JCTC. So what is Satisfactory Academic Progress? Every student's Satisfactory Academic Progress, or SAP status, is reviewed at the end of each semester after your grades have posted. Your SAP status determines your eligibility for financial aid in the next semester. Is the SAP status the same as your academic status? Actually, it's not. Your SAP status is different than academic status and only determines if you are eligible for financial aid. If you have questions about your academic status, you would need to speak to an academic advisor with those questions. So what are the SAP statuses and what do they mean for you? The first status is MEET. This is when you have met all of the SAP standards and are eligible for financial aid. We'll discuss the SAP standards in a few moments. But all new students coming in with no transfer credit will automatically meet SAP standards. The next status is warning. If you do not meet one or more of the SAP standards, you get one semester where you're on SAP warning. If you meet the SAP standards at the end of that semester, you go back to MEETs. If not, you go to the next status, which is suspend. After you meet those SAP standards on warning, you get placed on a suspend status and are no longer eligible for financial aid. If you submit an appeal and your appeal is approved, your SAP status can go to plan of action. This means that you will need to pass and complete all of your classes with a 2.0 GPA. Failure to meet those two requirements will result in you returning to the suspend status. So what are the SAP standards for PACE and for GPA? You must maintain at least a 2.0 cumulative grade point average. We hope you do better than a 2.0. We'd like everybody to get straight A's, but you have to have at least a 2.0 to stay on good standing for SAP. You also need to complete at least 67% of the classes you take. Again, in a perfect world, you'll complete every single class, but there are times when you fail or withdraw from a course, and this will lower your PACE or your completion rate. The classes passed divided by the classes attempted is your completion rate. So if you take 6 credit hours and you pass them, and you take an additional 6 credit hours that you don't pass, you have 12 total attempted credit hours, and you would have a 50% PACE/completion rate for those classes. This doesn't mean that you can't take more classes than 12 credit hours, or it doesn't mean that you can only take one class a semester, but it is cumulative. So if you fail a bunch of classes or withdraw from a bunch of classes, this can affect you in the long term, even if it was just one bad semester that you had. That's something to keep in mind while you're looking at your SAP status. The other standard we have is for exceeding maximum time frame. Every student has 1.5 times the length of their degree to complete their program and receive financial aid. So an associate's degree program at Jefferson is typically 60 credit hours. The most common maximum time frame amount would be 90 credit hours, which is 1.5 times the 60 credit hour length. Please refer to the KCTCS course catalog to verify the hours needed to complete your program, as it could be fewer or more than 60 credit hours, and your maximum time frame would adjust accordingly. So what happens if you go on a SAP suspension? Well, you can file a SAP appeal. Now, submitting an appeal and all the other needed pieces doesn't guarantee it will be approved, but it is the first step for getting back on a SAP plan of action. As soon as you go on suspense, we will usually put the SAP appeal request link available to you in the student self-service. It may not be there right away, but it should show up by the end of the semester and definitely before you come back for the next semester. If you have any questions or you're not seeing it in there, you can contact the Financial Aid Office. After you complete the electronic SAP appeal form, we will need some documentation for your situation. You must explain in your appeal what your situation is, why it was outside of your control, and how that prevented you from meeting the SAP requirements. You also have to discuss what has changed that will allow you to meet the SAP requirements in the future. Before your appeal is reviewed, you will have to submit documentation. This documentation should be submitted by email to jefferson-financialaid@kctcs.edu. Documents vary, and you must support what you wrote in your appeal. So for example, medical documentation, a letter from your physician or your therapist, obituaries, divorce documentation, police or court reports, or any other documentation you think supports your appeal can be submitted to the Financial Aid Office. Again, if you don't submit documentation, your appeal won't be reviewed. So we recommend getting that in as soon as you can. A signed plan of action form is also required and must be completed and on file. You can do this at jctc.me/APOA. If your appeal is approved, this is the agreement moving forward for you to continue receiving financial aid. Essentially, it's you saying that you know you need to complete your courses and you need to get good grades to keep getting your financial aid. The committee will then review your appeal and either approve or deny it. If it's approved, we'll put you on the plan of action status we discussed earlier, and we will make sure that you meet that plan of action each semester. So every semester, we're going to relook at your file and see if you've met it or not. As long as you're meeting the plan of action, you will continue on plan of action unless your file should be suspended for another reason, such as maximum time frame. So we talked a little bit about documentation before, but we're going to cover it a little bit more in depth here. The documentation should reflect the situation you describe in your appeal. So common documentation includes, but is not limited to, medical documentation or a doctor's note, obituaries or death certificates, letters of support from an objective third party, so that's somebody that's not affiliated with the school or affiliated with you directly, someone that can speak to your situation, such as a pastor, a therapist, or even just somebody that you know that knows what you've been going through. Maximum timeframe SAP appeals typically include copies of transcripts or other documentation showing the remaining time in the program. We must provide that documentation. You must provide that documentation to us, as it cannot be pulled by the SAP committee. What happens when the appeal is received? After your SAP appeal has been received, as well as all of your documentation, the SAP committee will meet and discuss your appeal while coming to a conclusion. After the decision is made, your to-do list will be updated and an email will be sent to your student email address through Jefferson. If your appeal is approved, we will have to have a signed plan of action form, and all other federal aid eligibility requirements must be met before aid will be reinstated on your account. Just for fall 2020, students have the opportunity to submit an early appeal if they believe they will not meet the SAP standards. Students can go ahead and submit their appeal as well as their documents now to ensure you're prepared for the spring 2021 semester. Any appeal submitted by the priority deadline of December 14th will receive a decision by the end of business on December 18th. Because of our institutional close, we cannot guarantee the SAP appeal submitted after December 14th will have a decision rendered prior to the spring 21 payment deadline of January 10th. So that's the basics of the satisfactory academic process, what a SAP suspension is, and how you can appeal it to get back on good standing. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Jefferson Financial Aid Office. We'd love to look at your situation specifically and see what you can do to get to the next step. Hope you've enjoyed this presentation and enjoy your time at Jefferson. Thank you.